Welcome to Frontend Hire, a platform I built for you to practice core frontend skills. This video is a free mini course on React with TypeScript and test-driven development. I should not be telling you this, but I'm a huge advocate for reading over watching. Hence, you will find course notes for all the courses I ever create. Also, it is easier for me to update the course notes than the video. I'm also replicating this course in Svelte and Vanilla.js, but the React notes are pretty much wrapped up, hence the reason I'm working on this video. You will also find a repo with checkpoints for every section. In case you get lost, just fork and clone the repo and you should be good. The only trouble you'd potentially face would be a version mismatch in any of the dependencies installed. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. For a long period, developers used CRA, Create React App, to set up their React projects. Back then, it simplified a lot of things, but the project pretty much stagnated and lost its place to other tools like Vite. It is no longer a recommended way of setting up a new React project. Theo, one of my favorite YouTubers, raised this PR last year to suggest Vite as a good alternative. This is an interesting PR with a lot of great developers commenting, including Dan from the React Code team. I'll link it in the description for you. It still works though, it is just not recommended. The new React docs, which by the way are amazing, recommend a full stack framework like Next.js or Remix. I use Next.js for most of my clients and personal projects, but you can also use React without these frameworks. I suggest this as a primary method to learn React. Next.js and Remix just add a lot of stuff that can overwhelm a new developer. In fact, they also added a deep dive into this with can I use React without a framework? You can definitely use React without a framework, but you would inevitably build your own framework. This is pretty much a good overview on why you should be using these frameworks and when you would want to use a custom framework. In my opinion and from some experience, I can say that most companies out there are still on CRA or on a custom setup with bundlers like Vite or Parcel, or maybe in the process of moving away from CRA to these bundlers. I believe it is mostly because these projects were started at a time when Next or Remix were not popular or maybe even did not exist. One of the recent projects where I saw the use of Next.js is OpenAI's ChatGPT. And of course, all of Versal's projects are on Next.js, but a majority of enterprise projects are still on a custom setup. So we do this course with Vite and TypeScript. Alright, by the way, I would be referring to my course notes a lot. I hope you open this course notes somewhere so it's easy for you to grab these commands. I would also sometimes grab the commands from the official docs so you understand how I made some of these notes. Good. First up is Vite. I grab the exact command from here. I just replace the view part with React TypeScript part. By the way, Vite is created by the creator of Vue. That's why they prefer Vue over here. Either way, you could choose this and just replace it with React TypeScript. Or else we could also run this particular command. Let's just use this command. Did you notice this particular callout? Vite requires Node.js version of at least 18. So make sure you're on version 18 or more. You can check that with node-v. If you see anything less or you see that node is not recognized, you could just go ahead and install node. Good. So I run the command npm create vite at latest. So if you use the command in my course notes, it won't ask you all these questions. I used a different command from the docs, but both will take you to the same place. Cool. I name it Todo App. It's asking me to select a framework. I choose React. I choose TypeScript. Cool. Now, all I have to do is navigate into the project directory and install my dependencies. This would install React, React DOM, all the TypeScript dependencies, ESLint dependencies. This should take a couple of seconds. All right, that took more than a couple of seconds, but that's good. I use VS Code. I hope you also use the same editor. If you're using any other editor, just make sure to go to the official docs and check how these tools integrate with your particular editor. Great. Now that we have our project open in VS Code, let us see what the next step is. Git. Git helps us maintain a history of our code. I would not do a deep dive into Git, but would show you some commands and also use the VS Code's source control tab. I do not have a preference for commands or the graphical interface way. I just use both. So the way to initialize a Git repository is to run this particular command git init in your project directory. And if you were successful, you should see an output like this: initialize empty Git repository, and your editor should also light up like this. Next up is Prettier. Prettier is an opinionated code formatter, meaning it has a general way of formatting code through a fixed set of options. You can read more about it here on the option philosophy page, but for now we just have to install Prettier. My course notes pretty much follow the same install instructions from the Prettier docs. I will also use the official docs for this video. And the command to install Prettier locally is npm install Prettier. The flags save dev and save exact install Prettier, install the exact version of Prettier and as a developer dependency. Cool. The save exact flag is kind of important. I mean, it is important. In fact, if you look at your package dependencies now, Prettier dependency is the only dependency where the package version does not have a caret symbol. This caret symbol indicates that whenever you run npm install, the npm is happy to update to any of the latest minor versions. And the thing that mandates this is something called as semantic versioning. At a high level, major version indicates your leftmost digit, minor version indicates the next digit, the patch version indicates the last digits. This is a very high level. This is not the exact definition. I would suggest you go read this and the other resource, which is the from the npm docs itself. The way all these projects manage the package dependencies is entirely up to them. The Semvar gives a good amount of guidelines on the same. I'll show you two open source projects now. One is cal.com, which pretty much uses the caret symbol to manage their package, their dependencies, which you can look at in their dependencies. Yep. As you can see, all of the dependencies include a caret symbol. This indicates that they're okay with npm automatically updating some of the packages. And it's only the minor versions and the patch versions, not the major versions. Now, Excalibur is another package which uses the exact version of your package, and the team pretty much manually updates their packages. As you can see, there's no caret symbol or no tilde symbol. Like I said, Prettier is an opinionated code formatter, and the way it formats your code is through options, and we need to store the options somewhere. And one of the ways is to create a Prettier RC file, which would contain all our options. I have a preferred set of options which I use in most of my projects. Again, this is something, it's a personal preference. Usually you talk it with your team in a team project and decide on the options. This set of options works for me. So I would also pretty much use these options for this project too. We should also have a Prettier ignore file to let the Prettier command line integration tell that ignore particular artifacts. It could be build coverage, things that you would not even bother to read, right? Build folder is such one of such folders. Coverage is one of such folders. And also, it's good to know that Prettier will follow rules specified in .getignore also, meaning it builds on top of getignore. So anything get ignores, Prettier ignore will also ignore those. Since it's a good practice, let us also have this Prettier ignore file. At the moment, we don't have any files we want to ignore, but these are certain folders we would obviously ignore in the future. So just have them. Since this is the first time we install Prettier, it is also a good idea to run Prettier over our entire project. And you can use this particular command. And what npx is basically, it is something that comes with npm and lets you run locally install tools, meaning it doesn't install the package, it just installs it, runs it in a temporary folder. It would run Prettier if you don't have it. Now, another thing to note is if you forget to install Prettier first through this particular command, like the local installation, running npx will technically download the latest version, and sometimes this can break your projects. So it is good to have a local Prettier dependency first before you run npx. Cool. So let us just run this, and it would format a couple of files with our preferred options. So that's great. We need to also set up a couple of Prettier integrations, which is nothing but the VS Code extension. You can go to your extensions and you should search for Prettier. You will find one from the official maintainers. Just install it. I already have it installed, so it works on mine. Next thing you want to do is also enable it as your default formatter. So in order to do that, just go to settings, search for formatter, make sure your default formatter is set to Prettier, and also make sure you enable format on save. That means whenever you save a file, Prettier would automatically run. Now, why do we have an extension and why do we have a local dependency? The extension would work standalone, but it would pretty much use the latest version of Prettier to format your code. Like I said, that could break things. And you can also see this particular note, don't skip the regular local install. Editor plugins will pick up your local version of Prettier. So when you don't have a local dependency, the VS Code extension would pretty much use the latest version. If you have a local dependency installed, the VS Code plugin would pick that particular version. In this case, consistency remains. All right. And also we want to be able to run Prettier later with our CI setup, which we'll do in a couple of minutes. I want to also show you how cal.com uses Prettier. If you look at their project again, they have a file called prettierrc.js. Remember the different ways to hold this Prettier options. The way cal.com does this is through a different package. They store their Prettier configuration in a different package. Cal.com uses a turbo repo to manage the project. So if you go to their packages, look for config, Prettier preset, and you can see where those particular options come from, right? And the way Excalibur does this is, in fact, if you see their project root, you wouldn't find a Prettier RC or Prettier JSON file. You would only see a Prettier ignore file over here, but there's no Prettier RC or Prettier JSON file. That is because they hold it in their package.json itself. And if we look for Prettier, as you can see, it technically comes from a different repo itself. So Excalibur hosts the Prettier configuration elsewhere. So these are like again, you get an idea how these open source projects are using Prettier. Next up is ESLint. The Vite template comes installed with ESLint. We do have to set it up so that it works well with Prettier. The thing with ESLint is ESLint can sometimes also format your code. Even though it's a linter, it sometimes format your code. But technically Prettier is a better formatter than ESLint. So we want to make sure we install a particular dependency called ESLint config Prettier to make Prettier and ESLint play nice with each other, right? And the command to install it is npm install savedev ESLint config Prettier. Let's just run that. Cool. And next what we have to do is we have to make sure the Prettier extends the ESLint config the last. This is pretty much a standard. Add how many rules over how many extensions you want, but Prettier should always be the last, so that whatever ESLint does, Prettier overrides them in the end. Only the formatting stuff, right? Not the linting stuff. Next up is Git hooks. Git hooks are scripts that run automatically anytime a particular event occurs in a Git repository. We will use it to run Prettier and ESLint before we commit our code. This will ensure that we do not commit code that does not follow our code style and formatting conventions. I will show you how that is possible. So if you go back to our project and open any file and just try to remove semicolons from this particular piece of code or these lines of code. Now, if you press save, it would automatically add the semicolons back. That is because we had this particular feature enabled, format on save, but you can't assume that everyone's editor is configured in a similar way. So let's assume I could manually save without formatting. And if I do this, I could technically now push code that doesn't stick to our coding standards. And by the way, in Git, we can do something like this. Git add full stop indicates I want to add all the files to staging. So this would pretty much add all these files. That's okay. Usually you shouldn't be using this command. It's better to add specific files and track them. But I'm just showing you this as an example. Next up, I'm committing my changes. So I could maybe name it as project init. But now if I press save again, my semicolons have been added and it shows that I made changes over here. Technically, yes, I did, but I did not add any logical changes. And this is not good, since if someone else sees this code and they would assume that I worked on this code despite me not working on this code. So it is better to not push such code in the first place. And the way we can solve this issue is through Git hooks. Now, again, this comes from the Prettier docs too. They suggest this. We need to install two particular tools. One is Husky and the other tool is Lint Staged. Husky is your actual tool that runs these Git hooks. Lint Stage technically only works on your staged changes, meaning we use Husky to run the scripts. We use Husky. Let's just set this up and I can explain it better. So I directly copy paste this stuff. npm install save the Husky lint stage, npx husky init to initialize a Husky project. You would see a folder with Husky and a pre-commit file, and it technically before commit, right? Pre-commit, run npx lint stage. Now, if you open your package.json, you would also see Husky and lint stage installed. And the next step is basically to add this particular code to your package.json. Now, this is important. What this does is, you can see from the pre-commit, it will run this command, npx lint stage. And that technically would run Prettier on all the files in the project. Now, why don't we just run something like npm run lint or maybe npm run Prettier? We could do that. But the thing is that would run across all the files on the project. Whereas lint stage would only run this on the staged files. When I say stage, only on these files. Only on these files would this particular lint stage commands be run. And this is better in the long run, because imagine running ESLint and Prettier for all the files that are already formatted. It's gonna cause a couple of performance issues. We don't want that. Lint stage prevents that, so it's a good idea to use them. Now, this particular command won't help you enough. I would suggest you use the lint stage command I have in the docs. What it does is it runs ESLint and Prettier one after the other for the files that match this extension, basically JavaScript, TypeScript, JSX, and TSX files. So ESLint runs first, it fixes any issues, and then Prettier runs. The problem is when you try to run this concurrently, like in a different line, it can cause a race condition. We don't want this. You see there's an exclamation over here. This would pretty much avoid the race condition. I'll explain this command. Let me just copy it here. So we are pretty much running ESLint and Prettier on these files, one after the other. ESLint runs first, then Prettier runs. Next, whatever files we previously ran, except those files, run Prettier on all the other files. And this can run concurrently because ESLint is not working on those files. So there's no race condition and we wouldn't find any weird issues. So that's how lint stage works. That pretty much wraps up most of our tools. Let's do some cleaning of our file. First up, we are not worried about the app CSS file in our project. I'm not going to teach a lot of CSS. You can also clear the index.css file. Add the file, but just clear the styling. And we also don't need these assets. We can delete those. And in the app.tsx, we don't have the app.cs. We don't have this. We're not going to use useState as of now. And we can also remove all this stuff. And we can just simply have a div with hello world. Hello world. Great. Now let's first run our project. And the command to run a Vite project is npm run dev, and it would open a localhost in this particular URL. Great. Since we made a couple of changes, let's also run get again and make sure that Husky works. I'll show you the same thing which we did previously to show that how that could be a problem if someone saves a file without formatting. So again, I'll just do a git add. It's fine here. And I'm going to do Husky and lint added, lint staged. Great. And you could see that this particular output, we didn't have this previously. This was technically preparing all this stuff that was required to lint and format a code. In fact, if you want to try it out right now, remove semicolon and also remove an exclamation, because technically the ESLint would add the semicolon back and it would complain that there are no changes to commit. Just do this and I'm gonna run. I'm gonna save without formatting again. Now let's do this from the graphical interface. I'm gonna add this to staging. This file is now being tracked. Now I'm gonna commit this particular change. Testing git hooks, and I'm gonna commit. Now, did you see the semicolon got added back? So you can understand how this is a powerful setup to have. And in fact, cal.com and Excalator both use Husky. In fact, a lot of projects use Husky nowadays. If you go back to cal.com, you would see a directory with Husky. And I believe they also pretty much run a pre-commit with yarn. They're using yarn to run the lint stage. And I think they would have a command for the file or folder for lint stage. Let me check the package.json. Yeah, you can see this lint stage over here. They're also running it in similarly app store packages running on Prettier and ESLint, running only Prettier on JSON. They're also running Prisma. So basically you could do a lot of things. And Excalator also pretty much has a ski folder. They also have a pre-commit. Okay, it is commented. There seems to be some commit that is temporarily disabled. Okay, again, sometimes these developer tools can impact your workflow. It's okay to disable them for a while so that you fix them. But yeah, you get the idea. Right now, we should be ready to start coding our Todo app. At this point, in case you have any issues, any version issues, I would suggest you just check out the project setup branch and just run npm install, and you should be pretty much aligned with the exact versions I had while making this video.